The making of a warrior. Before the stadiums roared his name, before the jerseys and speeches, Ray Lewis was just a boy in Bartow, Florida, watching his mother cry at the kitchen table, wondering where the rent would come from. He was born Ray Jenkins, but he refused to carry the name of a man who had abandoned him. His biological father, a record-setting wrestler, was a ghost. In his absence, Ray's mother, Sanseria, became his anchor. She worked 2, sometimes 3 jobs, coming home exhausted, but never defeated. Her love was fierce, and Ray noticed. He watched how she fought for their survival, how she bore pain without showing weakness. That, to him, was power. Ray became obsessed with strength, not just physical but emotional. At school, he was quiet, focused, always watching. At home, he made a vow. No one would ever hurt his family again. He didn't say it out loud. He just began to prepare. By age 10, he was waking up before sunrise, running the block, doing push-ups on cracked pavement. He made his own training program out of pages torn from magazines. He wrote down goals with cheap pens in old notebooks. Not because anyone told him to, but because no one ever had. His mom saw the fire in him, and one Christmas, she scraped together enough to buy him a set of weights. It wasn't much, a barbell and a few plates, but to Ray it was sacred. Every rep felt like he was lifting his family out of poverty. Every curl was a message to the father who never showed up. By middle school, the transformation was impossible to ignore. He wasn't just stronger. He was relentless. Coaches noticed. Teachers noticed. But so did the streets. In Bartow, if you weren't chasing football, you were getting chased by something else. Gangs, drugs, trouble, all circling like sharks. Ray had seen friends lose their way. Some never came back. Still, he stayed locked in. Discipline became his survival. Violence surrounded him, but he found peace in the rhythm of routine. Train, study, protect. He never smoked. Never drank. Every decision was a brick in the foundation he was building. And yet, something darker pulsed underneath. Anger. Abandonment. A deep, wordless fury that he carried like a second heart. It made him dangerous on the field, but unpredictable off of it. He didn't fully understand it yet. He just knew it was there, and he'd need to learn how to control it. In high school, Ray officially changed his last name to Lewis, his mother's name. It was more than a gesture. It was a declaration. I am not who left me. I am who raised me. He didn't know where football would take him. He only knew he was done surviving. It was time to dominate. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a voice whispered, "You were made for more than this town. Now prove it." The rise and the rage. At the University of Miami, where legends were made and egos collided like shoulder pads, Ray Lewis arrived not with fanfare, but with focus. He wasn't the biggest. He wasn't the fastest. But he was the loudest, in film rooms, in the locker room, and especially on the field. As a freshman, he was a nobody surrounded by future NFL stars. By sophomore year, he was their leader. Coaches said he studied game tape like a detective examines crime scenes. Pausing, rewinding, obsessing over angles and tendencies. While others partied, Ray plotted. His mind became as sharp as his hits. Miami fans worshipped the violence of defense, and Ray gave them a reason to stand. He didn't just tackle. He erased people. Sideline to sideline, he flew like he was chasing something personal. And maybe he was. That old rage, born in Bartow, hadn't left him. It had evolved. On the field, it was a weapon. Off the field, it was a shadow he tried to outrun. But success brought attention. And attention brought critics. He was labeled too emotional, too aggressive. Some scouts said he was undersized for the NFL. Others whispered that his style wouldn't translate. Ray didn't flinch. Every slight was fuel. Every doubt ammunition. In 1996, the Baltimore Ravens took a chance. 26th overall. New franchise. New colors. No identity. Ray would give them one. From his first game, he played like the league owed him respect. Opposing quarterbacks pointed him out pre-snap. Offensive linemen braced for collision. He studied opponents like a chess master and hit them like a sledgehammer. Teammates began to follow. Not out of fear but belief. Ray made you believe. He screamed before games, quoting scripture and shouting prophecy. He turned warm-ups into war dances. He didn't just play linebacker. He became the pulse of a franchise. Still, there was a cost. The anger that fueled him sometimes spilled over. He argued with refs, barked at coaches. Even in victory, he often looked unsatisfied. What the world saw was a highlight reel. But underneath, Ray was wrestling with something deeper. The need to prove that he belonged, not just in football but in life. The need to be more than the kid from Bartow, the son of a father who never showed up. By his third NFL season, he was a two-time Pro Bowler and the face of Baltimore's brutal defense. But glory is rarely quiet, and never safe. The spotlight that once made him shine was beginning to burn. And on a cold night in Atlanta, everything would change. The night that changed everything. January 30th, 2000. Atlanta was alive with Super Bowl parties and celebrities. The kind of night where egos flash brighter than camera bulbs. Ray Lewis, already a star, walked into that chaos wearing diamonds, designer threads, and the weight of everything he had earned. He left the city with a murder charge. The details were a blur in the headlines. A post-party altercation, a scuffle outside a nightclub, and two men, Jacinth Baker and Richard Lawler, stabbed to death in the street. Witnesses scattered. Blood stained the sidewalk. Police found a white limousine with a shattered window and a shaken Ray Lewis inside. Within 24 hours, he was arrested alongside two companions. All three were charged with murder. The NFL world stopped. The media circled like vultures. The face of one of the league's brightest defenses was now plastered across newspapers under a single word: killer. Ray said he wasn't the one who stabbed anyone. Prosecutors said he knew more than he was admitting. The suit he wore that night was never recovered. The limousine driver changed his story. Friends became liabilities. Everything that made Ray powerful, his presence, his voice, his certainty, was suddenly a threat to his own freedom. In the courtroom, Ray sat behind his attorneys, stone-faced. His two co-defendants maintained their innocence. But pressure mounted. After weeks of legal wrangling, Ray took a deal, pleading guilty to obstruction of justice. The murder charges were dropped. He agreed to testify against the other two men. The courtroom drama shifted. His teammates distanced themselves. Endorsements vanished. Public opinion fractured. To many, the case was over. But to Ray, it was just beginning. He paid a $250,000 fine to the NFL. But the real price was his name. For some, he would always be guilty, no matter what the court said. The image of the inspirational leader was gone. In its place stood a man branded by suspicion. And yet something unexpected happened. Ray returned to the field that fall with a fury even he hadn't tapped before. But it wasn't rage that drove him now. It was clarity. The chaos had stripped him down to the core, and all that remained was resolve. He began to speak less, listen more. He stopped chasing fame. He chased redemption. He still hit like thunder, still roared before games. But now his eyes carried something deeper. Like a man who had seen his own edge and chosen to step back. He had survived the darkest night of his life. But he knew shadows linger. The world had moved on. But Ray hadn't. Not yet. He had one thing left to prove: that greatness could still rise from ruin. Redemption and glory. Ray Lewis didn't just come back. He came back better. After the trial, after the fines, after the headlines faded, he walked into Baltimore's locker room not as a star, but as a survivor. The fire in his chest had changed shape. What was once fueled by anger was now powered by purpose. He became more than a linebacker. He became a voice, a mentor, a symbol of resilience. Younger players called him the General. He led with sermons, not just stats. In pregame huddles, he'd speak like a preacher at war. Eyes locked, voice rising, hands trembling with conviction. But make no mistake, he still played like a man possessed. In 2000, the same year his reputation lay in ashes, He delivered one of the greatest defensive seasons in NFL history. He led a Baltimore defense that allowed the fewest points ever in a 16-game season. He crushed ball carriers, dissected offenses, and never missed a snap. The Ravens won Super Bowl 35. Ray was named Super Bowl MVP. It wasn't just a championship. It was a statement. He had fallen, and now he stood taller than ever. Over the next decade, Ray Lewis became a fixture in football. 13 Pro Bowls. 2 times